Have you ever checked your location history? Not your current location or the little blue dot on the map, but your entire history. Because 3 weeks ago, I checked mine, and according to my phone, I've been visiting places I've never heard of, places I've never been to, and places that apparently don't even exist anymore. Welcome back to the Midnight Archives. Tonight's file is called My Phone Shows Locations I've Never Been To. My name is Ryan. I'm 24 years old, I work remotely, I live alone, and most of my days are spent staring at a screen, nothing unusual. The whole thing started when I was trying to clear storage on my phone. I opened Google Maps, dug through some settings, and found something called Timeline. Out of curiosity, I opened it. At first, everything looked normal. My apartment, the grocery store, my old workplace, and a few trips I actually remembered taking. Then I noticed a location from 2 months ago called Hollow Creek Road. I stared at it for a few seconds because I had absolutely no idea what it was. According to my timeline, I had spent nearly 3 hours there on a Tuesday night at 2:17 in the morning. That was impossible. I checked my calendar and immediately remembered where I had actually been that night. I was at home on a video call with friends until almost 3 in the morning. At first, I dismissed it as a GPS error. Phones get things wrong sometimes. But then I found another location I didn't recognize, and then another, and another. Over the past year, my phone claimed I had visited dozens of places I'd never seen before. Some were abandoned factories, some were empty fields, and some were roads in the middle of nowhere. A few weren't even marked on modern maps anymore. I should have ignored it, but curiosity has a way of turning bad ideas into irresistible ones. So I picked one location and decided to look it up. It was called Briar House. According to my timeline, I'd been there 6 separate times. The first thing I found online was a newspaper article explaining that the building had burned down in 1998, almost 20 years before I supposedly visited it. I actually laughed when I read that. The whole thing felt ridiculous, like some bizarre software bug. Then I found an old black and white photograph of Briar House before the fire. And that's when I stopped laughing. Parked in front of the building was my car. Not the same model, my actual car. The same dent on the rear bumper, the same missing hubcap. Even the license plate matched. I stared at the photograph for nearly an hour. The article had been archived years before I even owned the vehicle. There was no explanation that made sense. I told myself the image had to be edited, but deep down something felt wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep, so I kept digging. Every strange location in my timeline led somewhere, and every place seemed connected to a disappearance. Not famous cases, just ordinary people who had vanished without explanation. A hiker, a mechanic, a college student, a retired teacher. Some disappeared decades ago, and somehow my phone claimed I had visited every location connected to them. The next morning I decided I was done. I was going to delete the timeline and forget the entire thing. But before I could, I noticed a brand new entry that had appeared only minutes earlier. According to my phone, I had already visited a place called Willow Junction at 4:12 that morning while I was asleep. I almost ignored it, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. By noon, I was in my car heading toward the coordinates. The location led me to an empty road surrounded by dense woods. There were no buildings, no signs of life, and no reason for anyone to be there. My phone showed the timeline marker directly ahead, so against my better judgment, I followed it into the trees. After about 10 minutes of walking, I reached a clearing. In the middle stood a rusted metal sign. Most of the lettering had faded away, but one line remained readable. It didn't say welcome. It said, "Welcome back." The word back bothered me more than it should have. It implied I had been there before. I took a photograph, turned around, and left immediately. The entire drive home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I kept checking my mirrors, expecting to see something behind me, though I had no reason to believe anyone was there. That night, I opened the photograph on my computer and zoomed in. At first, everything looked normal. Then I noticed a figure standing far behind the sign. It was so distant that I initially mistook it for a tree. But the more I zoomed in, the clearer it became. The figure looked exactly like me. Same height, same build, same baseball cap I had been wearing that day. I convinced myself it was just a trick of the pixels, a coincidence, a shadow forming a familiar shape. Then my phone vibrated. The notification was from Google Maps. It read, "Would you like to review your visit?" My visit to Willow Junction. The visit that supposedly happened hours before I ever arrived there. My hands were shaking as I opened the notification. Attached to it were 3 photographs. Photos I had never taken. The first showed the clearing. The second showed the sign. The third showed me standing beside it, looking directly into the camera. I remember dropping my phone onto the floor. I checked the timestamps over and over again. Every image had been taken at 4:14 that morning, the exact time my timeline claimed I was there. The problem was that I wasn't. I had been asleep. For the next week, I barely touched my phone. I changed passwords, enabled every security feature I could find, and ran multiple scans looking for malware. Everything came back clean. Nothing explained the photographs, the locations, or the timeline entries. Then something even stranger started happening. New locations began appearing every day. Not past locations, future ones. Places I hadn't visited yet. Each entry included a timestamp that hadn't happened. At first I ignored them, but then I noticed a pattern. Every place eventually became real. A diner, an underpass, an abandoned church. The timeline always listed them first, days before I ever encountered them. It was as if my phone wasn't recording where I'd been, it was recording where I was going. At that point, I stopped trying to explain it. I simply watched. Every morning I checked the timeline to see what new place had appeared. Sometimes it was somewhere nearby. Sometimes it was hundreds of miles away. No matter what I did, the entries kept coming. Then last night, everything changed. A new location appeared. Unlike the others, there were no coordinates, no photographs, and no address. Just a name. Final Destination. I've spent hours trying to convince myself it's a joke, but every time I open the timeline, it's still there. The timestamp is set for tomorrow night at exactly 11:48 p.m. I've tried deleting it. I've tried clearing the app data. I've even factory reset my phone. The entry always comes back. But that's not the worst part. This morning I noticed something new. A note had appeared beneath the location. Just one sentence. "Don't be late this time." I don't know where the locations are coming from. I don't know who took those photographs. I've checked every account connected to my phone, every device in my apartment, and every possible explanation I can think of. Nothing makes sense. Maybe it's a glitch. Maybe someone's playing an elaborate prank. Or maybe my location history isn't tracking me at all. Maybe it's tracking someone else. Someone who looks exactly like me. Someone who's been visiting places before I ever get there. And if that's true, then I don't know where I'll be tomorrow night. But apparently, my phone already does. If you enjoyed tonight's file, subscribe to the Midnight Archives for more unexplained mysteries, strange encounters, and stories that keep you awake long after midnight. And before you leave, maybe check your location history, just in case it's been somewhere.